Gen Z has a really good head on their shoulders. We're also the most informed generation. We have like the world at our fingertips comparatively to, I mean, we're the first generation that grew up with phones in our hands, essentially. Just so many of us now are just so educated, sometimes not by our own will, forcibly educated by the media. And it's great and amazing, um, but it also impresses upon us a need to act because we see all of it happening, and it makes us want, it makes us upset and makes us want to do things.
Welcome to the Earthmates podcast. Together, we explore how to find your path from climate anxiety to community action by asking, who are you? Because just like any relationship, that matters. So get ready to be raw and real, but also playful and silly with me, Chief Relationship Officer Amber Peoples, as we discover what's possible through the lens of the 5 Earth Archetypes. Curiosity and subscription buttons highly encouraged. Welcome, my friends. Today, as we record this session, we are heading into a week of Pacific Northwest summers that I remember from when I first moved here 20 years ago, where the lows during the night times are in the high 50s, and during the day, we get up to the high 70s, low 80s, and it's really interesting, a sense of nostalgia that's coming over me as I look at that forecast. Because as our climate is changing and temperatures are heating up and temperature indexes are changing here in the Pacific Northwest, where we have the story of being the place full of rain and Mediterranean climates, we have indeed been heating up in our summer times where we've reached 100 or the high 90s pretty much most of the summer this year. And so it's really interesting to feel into my body and my psyche, this feeling of, oh, wow, we're going to have this week ahead of us that feels like almost a memory, a very pleasant memory. So this sense of nostalgia. So I'm really feeling that today. And wherever you are, whatever time of year it is, whatever part of the hemisphere it is that you are in right now, what's going on with your temperature around you, your atmosphere around you? I'm going to actually close my eyes and silently count to 5 and invite you to just take this moment to tune into, what is it? Is it something that feels different? Is it something that feels nostalgic, or somewhere in between? But let's begin the 5 seconds now. Thank you. Now, I'm delighted to introduce you to Weaver type Mari Dela Cruz. We actually met just 3 days ago at the Youth Climate Summit put on by the Green Energy Institute at Lewis and Clark Law School. It was a summer day that brought together about 25 youth from across Oregon to meet, learn, and discuss how to work with community leaders to put climate actions, policies, and legislation into motion. Truly an incredible group of teens ready to influence their communities and futures. We started the day encouraging everyone to change the question by identifying and imagining through their 5 Earth archetypes. Mari got a 20 out of 20 on the Weaver archetype. And then during the first raffle of the day, Mari jumped at the chance to record this podcast episode with me. So now we are here together today, and I'm so delighted to have you here, Mari. Without further ado, I would love to ask, what is your version of this story?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amber. Coming into the conference, I actually found out about it through a local youth organization called Sunrise PDX. I've been to quite a few of their events and have recently joined their Portland Rise campaign to a Green New Deal for Portland Metro and housing equality. However, seeing the event, I had a free Tuesday and I wanted to come by and meet more youth that were interested in environmental justice as I am, and hearing and seeing the ways that Amber specifically is taking environmental justice and putting such a different spotlight than just how I'm used to, with just straight going to lawmakers' offices, and getting more in touch with the media side of it was really interesting to me. And I love to get the chance to be able to understand more deeply the intersectionality between environmentalism and media production. Um, I was from the moment that we and I was reading more about the Earth Archetypes website, I was like, I need to sit down and talk to this woman. There is a conversation to be had here, whether that be good and lighthearted, or about like just theater and live production, or more deeply about the environmental issues that plague our society right now. Either way, I just knew I had to talk to Amber.
Well, I am delighted because also Mari definitely had this vibrancy, and so I am so delighted that it's this mutual excitement and respect for each other. And so one of the things that I would actually love in this moment to chat with you about, Mari, is that I know that you refer to yourself as a computer wizard. And when we talked about the quiz during that time we had during the summit on Tuesday, is you mentioned kind of you talked about a bit about the experience of taking the quiz, and in particular you kind of talked about what it was like to go through it, the 28 questions, the user experience. And so considering that of all 20 episodes of this first season, you are one of two guests that actually took this version of the quiz, which is more relatively recent, using a different software that allows people to see all 5 results rather than just one, allow for a scale instead of multiple choice, all these things. But I know that you had some thoughts about what it was like to just take it and actually, press the things and move through the system. And I'm curious what it was like for you to take the quiz itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Comparatively to so many other personality type quizzes, I mean, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, those are just such big names. And I feel like, specifically the 16 personalities website is created in such a way where you're able to just completely go through that gray area. And I love that the Earth Archetypes just has the 1 through 4. So you don't just fall in that middle, because I mean, we all are kind of wishy-washy with so many different things in our life. I mean, it's all contextually, I can go one way for this if it so happens to be that way, or I can completely disagree with it if it so happens to be another way. But I also love that the Earth Archetypes also just provide specific examples relating to the prompts, to really help readers understand kind of where they want to go with the question, because it can be interpreted in so many different ways. And I feel like that really kind of creates the holdup, to get to the end of the quiz, because you just think a little too much about each and every question when it's supposed to be just your first instinct. Um, I do also really appreciate the amount of data that is able to be driven at the end of the quiz. I am such a numbers person, and I love being able to see that donut graph and like comparatively to my other possible types. And I also really enjoy, just from a personality quiz standpoint, that the Earth Archetypes website doesn't dive in to exactly what every single archetype is. You actually have to seek that information and want to learn yourself. And I feel like that immerses people so much deeper than just, here's the possible one that you can get, take this quiz. Um, and I feel like it's just a really well designed, immersive um, quiz. I definitely, personality wise, feel like as the quiz develops, it's going to get a lot more quirky. I feel like there's a lot of visual elements that um, can be touched upon, but of course, you kind of have to start at the basis. And I'm really excited to watch it continue to develop, especially the fact that it runs so well on mobile. And that is one of the hardest things with so many online programs is being able to port it to mobile devices for that accessibility. And I mean, the Earth Archetypes website runs completely well. Haven't encountered a bug when I went through it. The quiz loaded completely fine and formatted completely correctly. So whoever did it, good job. Well done.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's, part of it was hunting down the right different softwares to use. Because once I found the software that I'm using for the quiz, which is actually something called Score App, I got really, really excited. And then from there, I've actually built it out myself because I find that at this stage of Earth Archetypes, it's really important for me to get my fingers in there and really touch so many different points because I'm learning so much with every step of it. I think the key piece that I heard with your comment there is that the next level up for you perhaps would be visuals within those questions would add another layer of understanding what are kind of these, in some ways, unique questions, because I'm trying to get at certain angles with each one. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. I also think just for how expressive of a person you are, and I think your specific Earth archetype, it would just really tie everything in to have specific visuals that go with each of these questions. And whether that's just like silly stock photos or like actual example photos to go along with the questions. I think we talked about it really passively, like a BuzzFeed kind of like quiz kind of way. I definitely think it will elevate the quiz in that way.
That's a really good point that you brought up that I hadn't connected before, which is I'm asking, how do you feel about this question? How does it relate to you? And so visuals often help with that emotional aspect. So that's a really good point that I hadn't connected before. So thank you for that.
I'm glad we're workshopping.
And now I want to dive into your specifics. I'm super excited about that.
Absolutely.
And so, Weaver, you got a 20 out of 20, which is amazing. And then when we look at the donut graph, and in fact, with the magic of editing, poof, we're going to have this moment. My version, the back end version of that donut graph comes up, where individual donuts for all the different types. But of course, we always want to look first at that highest score. And so when you took the quiz and you got the 20 out of 20 on Weaver, and because of the setting we were in, I asked people to skip the video because otherwise we would have like 25 videos competing for attention in a room. And so I sent people to the report that gets emailed right away. And I'm curious, during that experience, and you were starting to kind of dive into that, and then I followed it up by giving little brief descriptions of each of the type within that setting. Did it feel from kind of that instinctual first hit that the Weaver felt resonant, or did you have some reservations as you dove into it?
Reading more about the Weaver type and just seeing that, I mean, uh, wanting to bring people together is exactly kind of all I've striven to do for like a good amount of my life. And I feel like it definitely resonated with me and my personal mission and values.
Beautiful. So that piece that I often talk about when I talk about the Weaver is the verb interconnected. And when it came to this sense of weaving, that term is interconnected. And and when you heard that, did you what happened within your brain? Was it more of a feeling? Like, was it, oh, I'm starting to see how this fits these different pieces? Or it's a gut instinct of, oh, this feels a certain way to hear this about myself? Like, what was kind of those first initial responses to getting the Weaver as the archetype?
Absolutely. It felt honestly just more affirming that I know who I am. This quiz is telling me I absolutely know that I want to bring people together and bring thoughts and ideas together and like have all of these again, you just make everything so interconnected. I definitely for the longest time felt like it was so strange that I had just so many different like interests and passions, and I wanted to bring these people together with these people who would never talk if I never made them talk. Um, and to receive the Weaver archetype and see that, hey, other people are also trying to fit puzzle pieces where it might not seem like they absolutely fit. Um, definitely felt just reaffirming.
That's so interesting that you phrase it in that particular way, because I've had a couple other Weaver interviews for the this first season, and at this point, every single one of you have made a comment like that about how it felt like with having all these different and weaving them together, that it felt in some ways alienating or kind of a challenge. And one of the weavers that I interviewed, she actually talked about how there was this 1981 commercial about Reese's peanut butter cups where one person's like walking with a chocolate bar, one person's walking with a jar of peanut butter, and they like bump into each other and they giggle about how like my chocolate's in your peanut butter and your whatever. And voila, Reese's peanut butter cups are created. And she joked about how she had to kind of have that moment for herself where she's like, oh yeah, these all actually do go together. And now she actually, her career is around helping leaders that have a similar thing weave their stories together about their entrepreneurial businesses and why they have all these different elements. Another one, she helps corporate execs with their relationships within their HR of their businesses, as well as the relationships with their partners and their families, and really integrates how those are the same thing. And she mentioned the same thing when I brought up that at a certain point, weavers feel like it's a no-brainer that these things come together, but that's actually getting to that point can be kind of tough. There can be this point of first trying to figure out, why do I have all these interests? Why do I have all these threads? Why do I have all this diversity of elements together? And so it's super interesting, and I just want to really honor that, especially with, the other two that I interviewed. They're in their 40s and they've had that time to go through that process of finding it for themselves. And you at the age of 19 are kind of beginning that journey to figure out in this world how to pull these different strings and this amazing superpower that you have. So I just want to, like, first of all, congratulate for that aha moment, because it's a big one that can take a lot longer to get to, and can be kind of a frustrating process along the way. So I'm really excited that that's something that's really resonating for you right now, and giving you that empowerment to really jump on that and see what's possible with all these different threads.
Yeah, in that aspect, there was definitely a time where I was just like, I need to focus on one thing. Like, I can't just spread myself too thin and do this. But then I recently, within the last like 6 months, came to the conclusion that I am just meant to spread myself really thin and touch all of these different things because it's just what fulfills me and makes me feel better is to connect all of these different things. And I'm with this kind of affirmation, I'm just embracing that part of myself and not allowing myself to be on that one track mind because I just can't be.
Yeah, and that's what's really interesting then to dive into the results that you have in the other archetypes, where we had molecule at 85%, and then embodiment, metaphor, and network were all at 65%. And when I dove into the specific results, there were two trends that I saw that I thought were really interesting. One was the fact that of the 5 questions that I ask for each of the archetype categories, 4 of the questions revolve around the superpowers of that type. And then 1 actually addresses kind of the challenge of that type, the things that can go wrong with that type and where you need support from others perhaps, or need to do some reflection on in order to figure out how to navigate these challenges. And what was interesting is that with Weaver, you did put a 4 out of 4 for that one with the Weaver. And then for all of the rest of them, you had super low scores in the challenge area. And so I thought that was super interesting. But the one that actually I was so excited to see about yours, that I've been also really tracking the pulse on, is that every single one of the 5 categories has a question around problem solving, about if you have a problem of some kind that you need to solve. And it's phrased a little bit differently in each one. I don't just blatantly say, you solve a problem by doing this. But like one begins with when solving problems. Another one starts with when addressing problems. Another one starts with, I look for key solutions. And one of the things that I really want to applaud you for is that it looks like, both in regards to like how much time you spent on these different questions, as well as the really good variety of numbers you gave that question. I could tell you really thought about that one in particular for each of the categories. And keep in mind, that these questions are randomized. Never will there be a quiz until, we reach however many numbers of randomization you can get. Will there be a quiz that happens in the same order? And I very much did that on purpose, because I didn't want it to be like, well, these are obviously all of this type of question, and these are obviously all of this type.
It was like almost impossible for me to like really discern like specific ones, because I was like, she's trying to find something about like someone specifically looking to connect things together, and she's kind of looking for someone that's like trying to like problem solve just by textbook, but I couldn't really define each of the earth archetypes just by taking the quiz, which applauds to you, applauds to randomization and be in diversity in that aspect, because I really wanted to figure out and then hone in on the one that I wanted, and it was impossible.
When I look at that wonderful diversity of responses that you gave to that similar question, was it a conscious thing that you were taking your time and noticing, oh, she's asking all of these different ways of asking about problem solving, and I really want to like check in. Is it my intuition that tells me, or is it my logic that tells me, or all these kind of different ways that I describe it and divvy it up? Or was it you just truly in the moment of reading the question and this is my gut instinct and I'm going to press the right number? But I'm curious, because this is probably one of the best examples I've seen of giving a more spread out set of numbers to that particular type of question around problem solving. And so I'm curious what your experience of that style of question in particular was.
I did see the thread that like you're asking multiple problem solving questions. And it definitely was like a moment where I sat down and was like, okay, am I answering this because I want to be perceived this way, or because I actually feel this way? Um, and I think for the problem solving questions, I was definitely like bouncing between how do I actually go about these issues, and how do I, in practice, go about doing these things outside of this quizzical setting.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. So it sounds like overall, the experience of the quiz was this kind of fluid dichotomy or even maybe internal argument around perception versus who am I really and how am I going to show up.
Absolutely. I think that's a big, again, I don't want to say issue. That's a big thing that comes up with personality quizzes is uh people definitely answer in such a way where that's how they want to be seen by other people, especially if these results are going to be shown or exchanged with your peers and all of that. And it's difficult to separate that self versus that image of self because you can definitely think one way and talk another.
I even remember doing something similar when I was taking those quizzes that like school counselors give you at your senior year of high school, where they're supposed to help you kind of figure out what job that you're going to have in the future. And I actually remember working so hard to make sure that I got accountant, which I just absolutely laugh at now.
You're in left field from, I mean, that's like some parallel universe for sure that you became an accountant.
Totally. Well, and what became a really beautiful aha moment for me was when I entered the live event production phase of my career, and realized, oh, my greatest skill set actually that I contribute here is that I organize creative energy. So I was the one with the clipboard and the timelines and the spreadsheets and the budgets, and so in that way, that piece of me got to be expressed, but in this place where it was in this very chaotic, creative, imaginative, emergent kind of setting. And I'm curious with you as you look from that Weaver type of all of these interconnected pieces, the problem solving, with the Weaver type, that one in particular is when addressing problems, I work to bridge gaps and bring things, ideas, and people together. I'd actually love for you to talk a little bit about this phrase bridge gaps, because I find for people that are not weavers, that phrase actually leaves people a little confused. When I've done focus groups with people, if they weren't a weaver, that one was always like, I'm not really sure what you're talking about there. But if they were a weaver, they're like, oh yeah, I totally get it. Forward, moving on. And so I'm curious for you, like that's an example in my life where I kind of bridged this internal gap where I figured out how is this accountant side of me fit within this really kind of expressive, creative, imaginative world. And for you, when you're bridging gaps, either internally or with things that are outside of you and you're collaborating with, what does bridging gaps look like for you?
I absolutely love metaphors and analogies, and bridging gaps in that way plays into how much I love that expressions or idioms and all of that can express so much more than what we can express just with the basic English language. And I totally understand how maybe it's just so much more resonant for weavers to understand what it means to bridge gaps because we're constantly doing it in every part of our life. Um, for me, I feel like that's kind of the role that I've taken upon myself in most, if not all, aspects of my life, whether that's getting my family to actually plan an event and show up to an event all together at once, or get it in like a group project to actually for people to put their ideas down and then get roles and have people come together. In any aspect of my life, I feel like I've had to bridge a gap of communication between people because one person thinks one way, one person thinks another way. I could totally see how you both think those ways. Let me show you each other how this person thinks and this person thinks so that you can actually talk and figure out what you're doing together.
I love that. I love, I love, and partly what I love about that is, two of the kind of more common names that I give the Weaver type is facilitator and organizer. And that quality really kind of shines in your example there, and that lived experience of it. And it also brings me back to when we did the exercise at the Youth Climate Summit, where I gave this example of a person named John, who, in this scenario, he was a 20-year-old who was inheriting a 1,000-acre ranch, but has also been seeing the drought that they've been experiencing for the last 10 years and wondering what's even possible with it anymore. And I got everybody in their different types and asked, what suggestion would you give, John, from this lens of the different types? And kind of what was interesting for me to experience in that process was keeping in mind why we were all there. We were there because it was a group of people that were community organizers, and wanting to learn more about the legal side of how do we address climate policies and actions and legislation. Is that it became this really interesting moment where 4 out of the 5 groups talked about some kind of organizing gathering of some kind. But the part that I thought was super interesting was within those 4, we could still see the slight bents of the different archetypes. And the part that made me just giggle, and I even remember kind of exploding with laughter and talking about it more during our time together, was that the Weavers made sure that it was a party. That there was a potluck and there was, I don't know, maybe music and all these other things.
We said 20 acres. All right, this is a festival.
And that's what I'm curious about, is in that conversation, when you were coming to that potential solution to share with this imaginative character, John, what was the discussion? What brought you to that place?
It's honestly a very to be around so many people that had the same kind of like bridging gaps mentality, or like everyone contribute and then let's figure out something together. Essentially what happened is we all gathered into our little circle. Yeah. And then people just started spitting ideas. One person started writing stuff down, and then at the end we compiled all our ideas and then put it into just a understandable sentence to really exemplify what we wanted to do. We wanted to host a potluck that would be a fundraiser to help offset the drought, and then also bring the community together to give John more people to help on the farm as well. Of course, the center has to be food in some way so that people would come, because I guess we know what people want, you know. Um, and it was honestly really insightful to just have so many people that are so willing to just hear everyone else's ideas and go, okay, yep, that's good, that's good, that's good, let's get that all down, and this is what we're working with. Sweet, now let's make it happen. We were like already ready to like plan the potluck and like already like get there. We were like discussing like DJs already.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. And I just love hearing that those pieces of, because yours was definitely, the Weaver group was by far the largest of the 5 archetypes at the summit. And it's so interesting to hear that you're doing exactly what it is that I imagine as Weavers do, which is you had these individual threads, these individual pieces, and within a pretty short amount of time, like I think you only were in your groups for like 2 or 3 minutes. It was pretty short. And so you had a group of like 10 people to try to get condensed to one solution. And it sounds like in a very quick amount of time, you're able to hear each other out and integrate into a concise idea that included it all pretty much immediately.
Yeah, it was honestly the easiest group I've ever had to work with. It was just like, all right, cool, sweet. Everyone was just on the same page.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing that. And so I'm curious then too, because in the quiz there are actually 3 questions that are outside of the archetypes themselves, but are me checking in on some interesting things to kind of figure out how to help people with action steps. And one of the ones that you put 4 out of 4, was that you would like a community to practice how to navigate talking about and dealing with climate change. And I'm curious, now that you've been on this quest to find this community, you had this interesting experience at the summit where you're like, ooh, these kind of feel like my people. But I'm wondering, especially from a Weaver standpoint, which is often about, bringing together community, what is it that you feel like you are looking for in a community that would fit this desire you have to have a place of practice to navigate talking and dealing with climate change?
The speaker from Ashland, it was Arcat. It seemed like they really kind of encompass what I would desire in a youth climate action coalition, um, where it's just passionate people who want to come together and build community around this one thing. I think the biggest reason why I would say I put 4 on that question specifically is I just love meeting people. I love talking to people all the time. It's just being outgoing and connecting people and like tapping someone on the shoulder and pretending to be their best friend is like just what I love doing, and I want to continue to do that. So I saw that question as, hey, I have a community of people that are like-minded in that aspect. Do you want to meet them maybe? And I said, yes, yes, please let me meet them, please, please, please. Um, so essentially, I love talking to people. I love getting to know different perspectives. I don't think I will live enough life to experience all of the things that I want to in life. So I just want to take everyone else's thoughts and experiences and try to make them my own.
Such an epic spectrum of its own that it's just such delight to hear you talk about. And I am curious about that youth piece. We were there for a youth summit. You are a teenager. Part of the reason for the summit was the foundational, I think, value people had to have to be a part of it, whether they were like me as a speaker or you as a participant, was valuing the youth voice, particularly in the realm of climate, but even like in the realm of legislation and the realm of policy making. And so I'm curious from your perspective as being this person that we label youth, why do you think it is important to have that voice, whether it's yours in particular or the type of people there at that summit with, involved in those types of conversations?
Yeah, I honestly think my generation, I've heard this from so many other people as well, so I know it's just not my ideal, but my generation is going to be the generation that does something. We are very headstrong and very loud and very set in what we believe is right. Um, we've already done so many things. I mean, the youth have led so many different um, protests and different uh, gatherings and so many amazing activist causes. Um, and I think just pressing upon the importance of hearing the youth is honestly amazing to hear. When I was in high school, it was not long ago. When I was in high school, it definitely felt a lot more difficult, especially as a freshman, to be heard in a climate aspect. And I was definitely given a platform at times, but local lawmakers did not make me feel like I was recognized or heard because of how long winded those meetings are and because of how um, almost disregarded a lot of things were. I remember I was at a climate action um, gathering outside of, I used to live in San Diego County, outside of the North County Town Hall. And there was someone that was saying how, like, what we're doing is pointless because they've been doing it since the 70s and nothing's changed. And it was such an eye opening conversation to talk to this person. And, like, I understand their frustration, but also saying that the youth, if the youth couldn't do anything then, the youth can't do anything now is disheartening. And I know that's an ideal that a lot of people also adopt, and that is not the only person that believes that, you know, we're too far gone to actually change anything. But I mean, the girls in Ashland are doing amazing. So many youth uh, projects are doing insane things. And I mean, we are the future. We will continue to be the future. We will be in those lovely legislative seats at some point, if all goes according to plan. We will be the next people to enact these deals and make these decisions. And it's so, so important for us to understand what's going on around us because it's ours as well. And we're going to start being taxpayers and homeowners and all of that stuff if it all goes according to plan. Um, and it's just so important for us to be heard because we have really good ideas and we're also really funny. We're just really funny. Like, a really silly generation that takes some things so seriously and some things so unseriously. And I just think Gen Z has a really good head on their shoulders. We're also the most informed generation. We have, like, the world at our fingertips comparatively to, I mean, we're the first generation that grew up with phones in our hands, essentially. Just so many of us now are just so educated, sometimes not by our own will, forcibly educated by the media. And it's great and amazing, um, but it also impresses upon us a need to act because we see all of it happening, and it makes us want, it makes us upset and makes us want to do things. And so we act because that's what we know how to do, and we continue to. And I'm really proud of my generation. I really love Gen Z.
Awesome. And I love what you said about play, that, you know, that fits in so much with the realm of why I do storytelling, is we know that we actually learn so much faster when it's through play. Like science study after study will prove that it's drastically faster, like anywhere from 10 to 100 times faster when it's through play than through a very serious situation, or very perhaps dry even.
We make things so fun and so engaging. Like, it's just because it's what helps. Like, it stimulates your brain so much more than any lecture can.
Mm-hmm. And I know that where this makes me think of next is, I know something that's really important for you is this cross place of environmentalism and mental health. And that sounds like a similar aspect, is Part of the reason I developed Earth Archetypes is to help people get out of that stuck place when it comes to asking the question, what can I do? And getting stuck there for all kinds of reasons. And the overwhelm that can come with that, the anxiety that can come with that, and a variety of other things. But I know that this place of mental health and environmentalism are really important to you. And I'm curious what it is for you that brings your focus there.
I am definitely a person that deeply struggles with my own brain, as I believe so many other people do. Um, and the thought that the earth is dying doesn't help with the fact that my brain is like, well, I mean, if everything else around us is going, like, why do anything at all, you know? And getting out of that space and understanding that I can act and I have an impact on whether or not the earth goes with us um, is empowering and also nerve wracking to hold as a responsibility. And it becomes such a weird place to balance. A lot, I mean, constantly reading so many heartbreaking things and not being listened to by lawmakers is damaging. It makes you feel so unheard and almost like the work that you put in doesn't matter. Um, and that's disheartening and it makes you want to stop doing all of it. And I feel like um, because of how dismissive um, lawmakers tend to be on these aspects, it makes the uphill so much harder and it makes um, it just so much more mentally challenging to continue to fight the same fight. I mean, as the person that said they've been fighting since the 70s and nothing's changed, I could only imagine the mental turmoil that they've gone through with why am I doing this? What is the point of doing all of this when it's just so disheartening every time? And I mean, it's its own like psychological game when you're sitting through those meetings and having to digest the information, but also having to not fall asleep listening to all of that information. Um, and I think a lot of people don't recognize how the way that the earth is dying is impacting them because I mean there's so many small things that impact your mental health that the earth is also suffering for. I mean, I would love to see there's supposed to be like a meteor shower in like a week or two. Um, and that would definitely help, bring some solace that there's really cool things in the world. But I'm going to have to drive like 4 or 5 hours because of the air pollution and light pollution that is all around us. And um, in the same vein, there's so many small things that are being taken away from youth um, that again they just might not realize will affect their mental health. A lot of um, I Portland, Oregon is great about this. Parks will always stay, trees will always stay, but in a lot of places that aren't Oregon, um, a lot of parks are being demolished for some other industrialization, and I mean none of that's helping the environment. None of that's helping anyone's mental health. Um, and there's just so much that comes with being an activist because it's so hard to constantly scream about what you believe in and for it to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah, so really the theme that I hear in that answer is the that it feels like at this point is it's not only the environment itself and our relationship with the environment, but also the relationship with those, for lack of a better term, that are in power that are not listening. And we know as social creatures, not being listened to is an overwhelmingly intense experience in this sense of belonging and safety that we feel like we need to get from our tribe and the people around us. And so if we're not being listened to, it really elevates that fear of safety that is compounded by the fact that there's a real physical challenge also with our safety right now when it comes to things happening to the climate. So that's actually kind of what I heard in your answer was this two different threats to safety. And the environment fits kind of that physical one, and the mental health piece is that not being listened to. And so I'm curious then, in your world and knowing that you are a bridge gapper, how do you look at this challenge and try to imagine solutions? I know that with your Weaver type, you have a lot of different interests and a lot of different things that you're doing. In fact, you're going to be using your computer wizardry to work with the American Connections Corps. I also know that you're developing Mariposa Maids as a housekeeping service that uses eco-friendly products. So I'm curious, as you look at these two really intense and interrelated challenges to our safety, how are you looking at solutions?
As a weaver, I do love so many different things. And with American Connection Corps, I am working towards helping provide more digital literacy to underprivileged communities in Washington County. It's definitely what fulfills me, and I'm really excited to be able to meet again so many people. I just love talking to people all the time. Um, and um, in that aspect, I definitely want to be able to, once I am establishing digital literacy education, I would love to establish environmental education and how everyone is able to bring just really small, sustainable practices into their life. I carry a metal straw with me every day. I reuse the same water bottle that's messed up for the last year. Um, and also to teach people that it's okay to not be the perfect um, sustainability person either, um, because it's such a systemic issue that individual people can't solve it by just changing all of their household products to eco-friendly and by reducing all of their waste and all of their single-use plastic. Um, Everyone can try their absolute hardest, but also teaching people that it's okay to mess up, and it's really um, corporations that are contributing so much more to the degradation of our environment rather than us as individuals. But we're going to continue to try and advocate for um, the right solutions um, in bringing more sustainable practices into my day to day life. I am opening my own housekeeping business. I did a bunch of housekeeping on and off while I was down in California, and coming back up here, I just decided that it is something I really enjoy. Having a clean space really matters to me, and I understand that it's hard for a lot of people day to day to keep up that space. And I want to provide people also with the ability to choose to use eco-friendly products. I have an entirely eco-friendly setup, and I have an entire chemical-free package as well, to really just touch upon the different needs of people, because it feels good to use products that are good for the environment, and it feels good to come back to a home that doesn't completely smell like Lysol. Um, and there are just so many small things that so many people can do to practice sustainability. And I mean, everyone else has the ability to incorporate such small things in their life. As a weaver, I can see that everyone has the potential to um, just adopt small things to either better the environment or better their own relationship with the environment.
As we come to the end of the conversation, there are two questions that I always love to ask, and you actually kind of walked into it there at the end when you talked about your relationship with the environment, because I think that's a really key piece of this equation. Is as we look at this feeling that the environment is this adversary or this thing that is negative, it's how do we I don't know if it's the verb is reestablish or if it's what exactly the action is here. But I do think this end result of getting to a place where we have a reciprocal relationship with the environment is really important. And I'm wondering, when you hear that, especially considering with how you just ended that last, response, um, what do you imagine as you think about what a reciprocal relationship with the environment looks like?
In a reciprocal way, giving back to the earth as the earth has given to us, but really being able to, I mean, either in small ways, volunteer to help um, plant trees or give or clean up spaces, is definitely what helps me feel like I'm giving back to the environment. My ideal reciprocal relationship would be a closed loop homesteading system where, like, I have chickens that lay eggs, and the eggs I turn into calcium for my farm. And in my farm, I like have fish that, like, a whole hydroponic system. I've thought about this. I, like, every once in a while wanted to just completely go off the grid, but in my own personal aspect, I do feel like I appreciate the earth very consciously. I try when it's not like 80, 90s. Oh my gosh, it's so hot right now. When it's not like this, I typically try and go outside and go on trails and really just like sit down and appreciate how beautiful the earth is, because it just really is. And I feel like going through our day to day life, we take it so for granted how amazing everything around us is, looks, and feels. And I feel like Mother Nature just also wants to be appreciated, as every person does.
And so thank you for that. And as we wrap our time, this is where I ask the question that comes as a twist at the end, which is, what's something you wish I would have asked? What would you like to share, or have the listener ask themselves, or me ask you for you to give the answer? But what's something that you wish we would have included in today's conversation?
Totally what when she asked about my cat. I love my cat. Oh my gosh, I love my cat. My best friend now. Yeah, I don't know. I wish you asked about Garfield. I don't know. I wish you asked about this little guy in the cage. Like, that's but like that doesn't have to do with youth or environmentalism at all. It's just like I just want my background to be really, really engaging for those around us. For those watching the video on YouTube, I wanted them to have something interesting to look at around us.
What I love about your response to this is, you talked about how you feel as a generation, Gen Z is playful, and that we need to remember to do that. And I think here at the end, you brought it. You brought that playfulness, whether it's a stuffed cat or a real cat or anything in between. That sense of remembering to laugh together and to come together over the things that just connect us.
Life is just too serious. Like everything is just too serious. Like things just need to be silly. So many things are way too like I've signed so many papers. I just need to be silly.
Well, we're not going to sign any papers, but we are going to sign off of this podcast today. Woo, look at that. So thank you so much for joining me today, Mari. I'm so excited to get this up for everybody to listen to, and just a delight to get to know you better.
Thank you. It was lovely talking to you too, and I'm so glad I had this opportunity. Like it was just, I mean, I had to.
Well, thank you so much, and please stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Hey, Earthmate. How did that episode resonate? Did it stretch you, inspire you, or perhaps irk you? I'm here for it, so please reach out. Besides the socials, we have a community to practice with on our website, eartharchetypes.com, where more Earth archetypes can guide your path and become dear friends. A great place to start is the quiz to discover your type. Oh, and on your way, I'd love for you to hit the subscribe button. See you again soon.